Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be doing something just a little bit different than the usual Dune game online. I have been playing a lot of this game in person. My gaming group has been getting back together, and so I haven't had a lot of time to be playing it on TTS. But that doesn't mean don't want to share some of my thoughts on the initial flop. So this video is going to be about the initial Imperium Rows setup. I'm just going to be doing a sort of like random shuffle and draw the 5 cards, and then I want to talk about those, and then I want to talk about them with relation to your pick for leader, because you actually get to see the Imperium row before you choose leaders in reverse player order. And so let's talk about that in general. Now, there is a rule in the instruction booklet that says you can ignore other leaders from that faction's house if you choose one already. So for instance, somebody picks Baron Vladimir Harkonnen from House Harkonnen, then you just eliminate Glossu from contention of being a leader. My group never has played that way. I played once that way and it seemed fine, but I would just say that leaving all of these leaders available is kind of the right way to go. It is a very weird rule that had someone point out to me once, and I said, that can't be possibly real, could it? I guess it was. So in any case, we're going to talk about the validity of certain setups and what you should be looking for, what cards are important, and what cards work best with which leaders. So I'm not going to do this extensively. I'll have a couple other videos about this as well, but right now I just wanted to talk about a couple initial choices. All right, so let's talk about this. So we have Duncan Idaho for the first flop here. I don't really like Duncan Idaho. I think he's okay. He's just a fine leader. He's a fine character. He's okay in this game. His problem is that his agent ability requires water, and that can be pretty hard to get. However, I do really like Duncan Idaho if you can get Countess Ariana Thorvald, because she has a lot more access to water than most other leaders. And this is a particularly powerful leader if you can get the right synergies going on with her. So Duncan Idaho is one of the cards that works really well with her. The other one in the deck is the Carryall, and there are a couple other minor ones too. Obviously, you can build a Fremen Bond Spice Hunter, drip economy for spice to kind of compensate for the fact that whenever you harvest spice, you gain 1 less and draw a card. So those are some of the things that you can do with her. So if I was seeing this flop here, I'd see Spice Hunter and Duncan Idaho, both of which are good for Countess Ariana Thorvald. Stilgar. Now, Stilgar is just a really strong card in general, and favors those who want to play a more aggressive start, maybe a little bit more going all out in battle. His 3 swords is incredibly powerful, and his buy power, his persuasion of 2 is always welcome. Notice that this is a very high persuasion flop, not this one, but these are 3 cards that have 2 persuasion. So if I were going to be going into a high persuasion build, I would be thinking, okay, this is a kind of flop that would let me build toward a high persuasion style. And if I wanted to do that, I would be thinking about a couple of leaders. So the first leader I'd want to think about is Helena. Now, most people think that Helena, I'm just in blankly state, Helena is one of the most powerful leaders in the game, and I do not dispute this. I think she is probably the strongest leader overall. Her ring ability is very tricky, and I've seen it work over people who have been trying to get to 7 or 8 persuasion, and then she plays her ring, rips that card out of the row that they were clearly trying to go for because they went to research station or whatever and drew a bunch of cards. Suddenly she just rips it out of the row and you never get it, and all of your plans are dashed. Her ring is deceptively powerful. And also her eyes everywhere ability to just ignore enemy agents at green and blue spaces is almost game breaking, because she does not have to ever worry about being blocked at Swordmaster, High Council, Carthag and Arakeen, or even Research Station. These are 3 of the hottest spaces late game. Carthag is one of the just hottest spaces in general. And then obviously being able to go to Swordmaster or High Council whenever you want is really nice. She has some fringe abilities to go to Mentat, even if the Mentat's taken, just to draw a card, which is not terrible, but if you have some extra excess Solari, it can help. In any case, if I were looking at a high persuasion build for my deck, going for only 2s, then I'd say Helena's a great one. The reason being, you could get a potential 2 cards when you get your ring. So you could pull a shifting allegiances, for instance, and then buy gene manipulation plus that for 5. So she has a lot of potential to go high persuasion early. The other character I wanted to mention is Ilban, who is a great character if you want to go high persuasion. He lets you draw cards frequently. You're going to want to go to Mentat every other turn, basically, and then so he can draw a lot of cards through that. He tends to have a lot of extra money, and he wants to hit like Arakeen, Mentat whenever he can. That could be a potential way to go with him. His ring ability is okay, but it actually gets better with the expansion with Ix, just because Solari becomes harder to find. But that could be a potential way to go. So he's the second high persuasion build character. And the third one is Paul Atreides, who is slightly better at drawing cards than Ilban is, in my opinion. This may be debatable, but the fact that Paul can check to see if the top of his card is a 2 persuasion, then go to Arakeen, drawing a card, maybe with his ring, drawing another card, and then finding that extra persuasion to buy the high persuasion cards. So those are some options here. Duncan Idaho, I would probably not pick unless I was going for Ariana or I was last picking, because Ariana is not likely to get picked early. Usually it'd be like Helena, Baron, maybe Leto, maybe Beast. Beast is very, very strong. In fact, I wanted to mention that with this flop here, notice how many swords we have out. So we have a bunch of swords, and Beast is just great at overall taking control of the battle. His ring ability is incredibly strong, and if you can get his ring to double, basically, to get two troops with 1 action, you are almost unstoppable in the battle. Like he's pretty nuts. So with this, I'd say, grabbing Stilgar with Glossu might be a way to go. It might be hard early. Sometimes he doesn't have the persuasion, so he might just open like Hall of Oratory and then reveal for Stilgar. Not a terrible idea for Glossu. He might actually want Spice Hunter and Stilgar. Like if you can go Stilgar first and then get like a Spice Hunter, or go Spice Hunter and then Arrakis Liaison if nothing else comes up in Fremen, then you're in good shape. Beast really likes Fremen because they generate a lot of spice generally. Water as well. Like the Space Hunter is a very, very good 2-cost card. It gives you access and it gives you a Fremen Bond trigger. So that's a very good card. And it just synergizes well with something that's easy to pick up. So he's always in he doesn't want to go nuts with too many cards early, but if you can get something that like helps him get an edge on access, then that's a good one. One option here, though, is one reason I might not choose Beast is that your access to different factions is very limited. You only have 1 faction represented between Stilgar and Spice Hunter, in that the Fremen are represented, but no other factions are actually being represented. And so if I were picking early, I might not take Beast until I knew what I was doing. Like maybe first pick, because you can reveal early, get Stilgar, for instance. But if everyone else is contending for Fremen early, then you might be in trouble, because there will be more people, more Fremen symbols out there, more people going to Fremen, and that would make it harder for you to get that ring powered up, which you really want to do with him. What else do we have? We have Gene Manipulation. Gene Manipulation is the phenomenal card, one of my higher picks in this game because of its ability to cull cards from your deck, because it's trash ability. We don't see any other Bene Gesserit yet, but that doesn't really matter. I would just take this card for the trash ability and then maybe grab another Bene Gesserit later on if I could. So that's a great early pick. And Shifting Allegiances, one of the strongest cards in the game, in my opinion. It's very high mid-tier. Maybe it's a high tier. Just the fact that you can use it to steal alliances away kind of out of nowhere. 2 spice is a bit of an investment, but it's not too hard if you're a couple people, Beast, for instance, or if you are Memnon. Shifting Allegiances, if I saw that out there, I'd be like, all right, so I want a character who has some extra spice generation. That could be Memnon. Also, Memnon somewhat endears himself to a high persuasion build with these being out here. That is a good option as well. So we have a couple of good options. The one I'd say that isn't super favored here, maybe it is, because Leto is a very strong leader if you can get the extra spice to always charge his ring. and he's always contesting the Mentat because he just costs 1 for him. I might pick up Leto and go early Spice Hunter, Arrakis Liaison, and just try to get that drip economy going to power up my ring constantly. That might be a good way to do it as well. Also, if you see another Bene Gesserit, grabbing a gene manipulation and getting the spice that way would be another great way to do it. So both Ariana and Leto, they want the drip economy for spice, and that could be a great power up for them. However, shifting allegiances is hard to use with Leto, I found, and it's hard to use with Ariana just because they're slightly behind in terms of spice. Usually, not always, of course. So I would say like Baron Vladimir Harkonnen here could also benefit. How could Harkonnen benefit? Well, there is the Master Stroke ability, which says at the start of the game, secretly choose 2 factions. When you deploy 4+ troops to the conflict in a turn, reveal your choices and gain 1 influence. So there are 2 major ways on the board that you can do that. One is through Hardy Warriors. If you already have 2 troops in your garrison, then you can get the 2 plus the 2 and dump them in, trigger his ability, and move up with 2 tracks. The other one is with Highliner. And now there are obviously other ways to do that, but just from the base board without any other cards, those are the main ways you can do that. And so because we do see Spice Hunter and Stilgar giving access to those factions, you might want to, as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, kind of take a Beast Raban strategy, and that is maybe go first turn Hall of Oratory and then try to reveal for Stilgar. And if you see somebody doing that, then you might consider cutting them off if you have 5, or if you're Helena, to try to play your ring to pull Stilgar out of the row, because that's the card among all of these that I'd say is the highest value, just from its base stats, highest value. A free water is nothing to sneer at. Okay, so our second Imperium Row setup, let's see what we have here. Ooh, this is pretty spicy indeed. Now, I love seeing Sardaukar Legion out there early. That is one of my favorite cards in the game. It is an undervalued, I think, card that is very flexible. It gives you access to the Emperor track. It also is a kind of sneaky way to get up to 6 power into the battle, or 6 strength in the battle, as long as you've got enough troops in reserve in general. Obviously, Worm Riders is the flashiest card here. Not only is it just a great battle card when you reveal it, but it also gives you 2 spice. That's very strong. Power play, one of my all-time favorite cards. But this one is very powerful because it can let you, it basically is a point, if you think of it that way. So if you play it first turn or second turn and you go directly to like wealth, it gives you a point. So this card is worth about a point. Later on in the game, it could be worth a point or plus if you end up using it to take an alliance away from people. So not so great early on, I'd say, but it's okay and great to have an option of early. Now we have the Scout here. Scout is one of the weaker and one of the 9 1-cost cards in the deck. I don't mind Scout. It has 2 icons, and it's a decent reveal. The retreat up to 2 of your troops can be nice. The big problem with it, in my view, is that I don't think I would base my leader choice on it, right? So we'll come back to some of these earlier and why I might choose them with a leader, but Bene Gesserit's Sister is a strong card. It's very flexible. I quite like this one. I've been playing a lot more Bene Gesserit's Sister. When they come up, I've been snatching them up. Just having the extra 2 power for reveal has been strong, or the ability to just buy a Spice Must Flow if you, up +2 to your persuasion to get up to that 9, that coveted 9 for the extra point. Those things can get you there. So what do I see in this row, and who would I pick if I were first picking? So this is showing me a low persuasion build. In fact, it's so low persuasion that this doesn't even have any persuasion, meaning that you're going to probably want to compensate or go for a more battle-oriented build. My first pick, if I were going to be looking at this, is honestly probably Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And the reason for that is the extra 2 troops allows him to keep his Master Stroke ability online more. And maybe this is just the way I play, and I know some of my friends do not do this. They keep tons of troops in their garrison. Is actually a better way to do it than I do. I kind of like run very low to the ground, but meaning I have only like 1 or 2 in my garrison, and then when I deploy them, I try to deploy everything every turn, which is not always the best thing to do, to be fair. But if you are having any trouble getting troops, so you can trigger your Master Stroke at Hardy Warriors, which is the easiest way to do it, then Sardaukar Legion will keep you in the cubes. It will keep you at the troops, okay? And that is not something to sneer at. In addition, this card synergizes very well because it gives you access to wealth, one of the Baron's favorite places to go, because it also powers up his ring, getting the extra money. All of these cards actually, except for maybe Bene Gesserit's sister, work very well with Vladimir Harkonnen. The reason being, even Scout, is that Scout grants access to Secure Contract and Carthag, two of the Baron's favorite places to go. Secure Contract is great, of course, so that you can get more money for the intrigue cards for his ring. And just going to Carthag is insane because, you know, getting an intrigue card, and if you go with your ring, you get 2 intrigue cards. That's value, guys. So I would consider this a Baron Harkonnen pick first. This could also be a strong Ariana Thorvald pick. And I want to say that this is mostly off the back of the fact that Worm Riders is out here. As I mentioned, Ariana is very good at getting water, but not good at getting spice. But Worm Riders really fixes her deck. It is a great way to get spice. Just going anywhere in blue and yellow for 2 spice is quite remarkable and is not always how people play Worm Riders, but it is also very strong, especially if you get it early. One of the best power cards in the game if you can get that early and also get 2 influence with Fremen. So I would consider that with Countess Ariana Thorvald. That is a very strong pick. The only issue I can see is that if Helena's in the game, she might snag it with her ring. That is always a problem. And so I would kind of default to what she's not going to grab. She would probably grab this card. It's possible she'll grab Power Play or Sardaukar Legion. Probably not Bene Gesserit's sister, though. And Scout, obviously not. I don't think so. If Helena Richesse is not in the game, then Countess Ariana Thorvald becomes possibly the strongest contender for the Worm. Obviously, it's good with everybody. Same thing with Leto. Leto and Ariana, I put in the same camp that they need spice, and I mentioned this already. So Worm Riders fixes that. It lets Leto play a little bit more aggressively on the planet as opposed to just in their Landsrod. And it could also just be great with Glossu, I mean, because it doubles down on his attack abilities, you know, his ability to go down into the conflict. Then it also... note that usually he tries to get an alliance early. That alliance is usually in Fremen, I've noticed. Sometimes it's up here, sometimes it's somewhere else, but usually I'd say maybe like 60% of the time that an alliance is got early by Glossu. It's one of these. It's like these here, maybe here. That's usually what happens. So that means that Worm Riders is going to be online more likely for Glossu. Okay. I also want to point out that this row has a spread of different icons. So we have one that's everything, but it's a one-time use. We have one that's Emperor, which is permanent, right? And then we have one that is Bene Gesserit, that's permanent. So essentially what we have here is that wherever Glossu goes, if he goes for the Fremen track and tries to like maximize Fremen to get alliance, he's not going to be contested very much. The power play might go there, but I don't see people power playing to the Fremen very often. I usually see them power playing to Highliner or Full Space early, or Wealth, or Conspire if they can even get that, probably not. Or Selective Breeding, because getting a point, discarding, trashing a card, and drawing 2 cards is pretty strong because you are culling this from your deck as well. So like a round 3 power play, or maybe a round 2 power play if you're lucky enough to draw enough cards to get it back into your hand. Lots of cool options, but you're looking at like a third round power play. Third round Worm, also strong. So that's where I'm looking at there. These 2 for the Worm, and maybe Glossu as well. But Sardaukar Legion for Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, also decent with the Bene Gesserit's sister. So people who don't really benefit from this row, who are they? Well, Paul, for one, doesn't really have a great card that he could call his own. Memnon doesn't really have anything he can use here. He's going to be getting spice himself, so the Worm Riders is fine, but you know, it's good for everybody, but not particularly special for him. There's no way to get Solari so that he can get to High Council early. The best thing I could say is that if you were going to go for a Swordmaster play with Earl Memnon or with Glossu, which is definitely something they tend to do, but not always, you go like Haga Basin to Sel Melange, next turn Swordmaster to something. Very possible to do that. Then you're looking at a couple more options during your turn, like an extra action. And so you want more flexible plays. You probably won't want the power play because it trashes itself, and then you have 2 cards in your deck that are already don't have any icons. You want more icons, not fewer icons. So I might take, like, if I were playing Memnon Beast, I'd first prioritize Worms just because it's best. Maybe a Sardaukar Legion. I think those are also very good. Sardaukar Legion with Beast is also fine. And then maybe a Scout, just to have the flexibility of the 2 best spaces types in the game right here. So, I mean, that gives you a lot of access. It gives you access to the things you need. So that might be what I'd do. Are there anything else here that I'd say would be good for Ilban? Ilban doesn't have a terrible go of this. So Ilban's best cards are Bene Gesserit's Sister and Sardaukar Legion, mainly because they give him access to the spaces that he draws cards for. You know, the Mentat, High Council, Rally Troops, etc. But there's not really a way for him to generate money per se, and so that's going to be a little bit harder in general for him. All right, let's do one more of these flops and talk about them and see what happens. Oh boy, wow, look at this row. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is that this game, if this was played, would all come down to, possibly, if the person who gets Lady Jessica also gets Missionaria Protectiva. Because while Lady Jessica is incredible card, the fact that it gives you Bene Gesserit access, but all of the other regular spaces, the Landsrod, the cities, and the desert, it also gives you 2 cards and 3 persuasion buy and daggers. This card does everything. It'll just give you also 1 influence by buying it. There's a reason that most people consider this one of the strongest cards in the game, if not the strongest card in the game. I would be hesitant to first pick anyone but Helena Richesse because of this. Her ring could make her cost 6, which is easily doable in round 1 if you go, like, for instance, a ring to Still Suits to get an extra water, and then to Research Station, draw a bunch of cards, by Lady Jessica. I mean, that's a possibility, you know? So, like, you can do that with Helena. This is a very strong Helena setup. The other things, the other characters it's very good for. It's very good for Paul. I know it's really weird that's obviously Paul and his mom are great together, but they really are, because they draw lots of cards, and Paul and Lady Jessica love doing that. They draw also all sorts of cards. That's very strong. I'm seeing a strong Bene Gesserit theme here already, and that would push me into wanting to draw through my deck as much as possible. Usually Bene Gesserits, you have to trigger them in order, and they're always a play effect, so an agent effect. So for instance, this one requires another Bene Gesserit card in play to work. This one requires another Bene Gesserit card in play to work, right? And this is the enabler for both of them, because it just does its thing no matter what. The other thing to keep in mind, so Reverend Mother Mohayim, potentially a huge upsetting card for some people because of the discarding 2 cards effect early on. If you can get it online, can cause a snowball effect. It is difficult to do that, and I wouldn't suspect that you would be able to. Maybe if you Helena Richesse, like I mentioned, to Still Suits, turn action 1, then action 2 got to Research Station, you know, and with your ring you went to Research Station with your ring, then you pulled Reverend Mother away for 5, and then you had 6 buy to get Missionaria and Reverend Mother. I could see that being, like, even better than getting Jessica. Generally, it's not. I'd say generally it's not, but you might not have 7 or 6 to get Jessica. If that's the case, then you won't be able to get Reverend Mother and Missionaria either. So some of the other things that are interesting about this flop, it is a high persuasion build because of the draw requirement, or the draw actions. It is also high persuasion because even Imperial Spy, which doesn't draw you cards, trashes itself, gives you a potentially powerful card and an intrigue card, and it gives you access. I love this card. Love it. Absolutely love it. It's so powerful. People don't sleep on this card. It's very good. If you end up ever Imperial Spying to Conspire, trashing it for 2, getting intrigue, another intrigue, 2 troops and 5, you feel like you have actually done something quite massive. And because it calls itself out of your deck, you don't have to worry about drawing it again. You'll be able to draw other better cards. So very good. Arrakis Recruiter, very strong. This is one of the stronger 2-cost cards. I love this card as well. The fact that it is just, you know, goes to the city isn't that big of a deal, because you're going to want to go to these cities anyway. I mean, they're very, very good cards, very good places. Being able to Rakkus Recruiter into Karthag, getting an intrigue card and dumping 2 guys into the conflict is nothing to sneer at. So keep an eye on that card. You might play a low persuasion game with Imperial Spy, Rakkus Recruiter first pick, and then just cycle through them as fast as possible with going to our Arakeen. Not a bad plan. But because of that, I'd say that Glossu benefits very much from this setup. Glossu, because of his ability to go into conflicts very well, and this just helps accent or augment that ability. We could see that, yeah, Memnon isn't great here, although the synergy with, if you can get Lady Jessica with him, that's fine, because the influence bumps with his High Council plus her is a point. I think he's the one who doesn't benefit that much from this. Ariana Thorvald, however, and Duke Leto, because of the presence of Mother Mohayim, should be considered. And the reason I think that is that even though I think probably Ariana a little bit more. And the reason is that because Leto wants you to go to green spaces, and she doesn't give you one of those. Now Ariana Thorvald doesn't really care. She just wants more spice. So, just playing Mohayim as a reveal to buy, to persuade, to spice, very, very strong. Getting 2 more spice at the end of the round while everyone else is fighting over a battle feels like you actually participated in the battle. And she has so much trouble harvesting, so... Vladimir Harkonnen, I would say not so much for him this game. There's not a whole lot going on here. The only thing that's really good for him, obviously Lady Jessica's good for everyone, keep in mind, but Imperial Spy is fine with him because of his ability to, ring to another intrigue card. So if you seek allies to wealth turn 1, that's pretty solid. Then you'll have your Imperial Spy turned on no problem. I mean, your ring turned on no problem. And then Imperial Spy just lets you go to wealth or conspire, which is good for him. I mean, that's good for everybody though, right? I mean, the big problem is that he doesn't benefit from this more than anyone else. However, let's look at these symbols here. Now we have a very heavy Bene Gesserit, heavy Emperor set of symbols, right? What that's telling me, let's just ignore Missionaria Protectiva out there, because if somebody gets this plus Lady Jessica or this plus the Reverend Mother, that's pretty scary. Because of the lack of Fremen and lack of Highliner, if I were picking Vladimir Harkonnen early, then I would probably want to specialize in those 2 factions that do not show up here. Because I'm likely, if I'm first, second, or third player, to pick up one of these characters, right? At least. And I'm also likely to reveal early, if I can, to buy Mohayim. And I also really, 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 really want to be the only person in a particular faction to get that alliance token, those extra points. So maybe the goal here is to start snaking away certain faction advancements. So for Vladimir Harkonnen, getting Mother Mohayim early could force people into Bene Gesserit, and then the Imperial Spy is only a one-time effect, so not super great for continued access, obviously, but Mother Mohayim gives you those access cards. It covers 2 of your bases, very strong. For Glossu, it also does that too, because he wants to have that alliance token really, really badly. So you might grab Mother Mohayim for him. The spice is also nice, right, for anybody. Besides that, I'd say this is a poor start for Ilban, a bad flop for Ilban. And the reason is because there are not very many green symbols. Usually he wants some more of those. He wants to have like 3 or 4 in his deck that he can, constantly always hit Mentat with. It's, like I said, okay with Leto, and that's going to depend largely on some of the other cards that come out. I think if he can get Mohayim, that's very strong. I think it benefits Elena the best, and I think it might benefit Paul the second best. And that might do it for us here. There are lots of interesting things, lots of interesting combinations. If you like this video, please let me know below, and I will continue doing these little analyses of the flop. As I have not been able to get games on TTS lately, I don't know when I'm going to get those done. I'm looking into getting some actual real games broadcast for everybody, so stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.